On graduation, I was sent to Grey Hospital in Greymouth because I'd had a bursary, which meant that then I was required to work wherever the government sent me. In those days we still had polio infections all around the place, and in 1956 was the last big epidemic. So we were doing the Sister Kenny method of heat treatment for the people who were patients in Grey Hospital. We had a rotating washing machine that had an element to boil the water in the bottom of it, and we placed pieces of woolen blankets into the boiling water, and then very carefully with wooden tongs lifted them out and ran them through the rollers to squeeze the water out, and then put them straight onto the people, and it was the only pain relief that worked for the people, including very young children. It was while I was at Greymouth that I saw the first person die. He was a man in his 40s who had 6 children, and he had bulbar poliomyelitis, and they used a positive pressure respirator machine using a tracheostomy, and the bellows failed. There was a spare pair of bellows, so they put that on, and they failed too. They weren't strong enough for the work that was required, and the man just died before our eyes. It was just so shocking. In the women's ward next door, we could hear the clanking of the iron lung, and there was a woman there, a pregnant woman, in the iron lung. She was about 4 months pregnant when she got polio, so she spent the next 5 months in the iron lung, gave birth to the baby, and bounced back as though nothing much had happened. And the last time I heard about her was, that was her first baby. She had 5 other children, she learnt to fly, she was a farmer's wife from South Westland, and she did really well. So I guess the moral of that story is be pregnant when you get polio. There was a gorgeous little 4-year-old, he also had the bulbar polio, and he died, and that was so sad. About 4 months down the track from the epidemic, I thought that I would like to get the people into the water, to give them hydrotherapy, exercises in water. So we arranged to use the Greymouth municipal pool, and there was an absolute uproar because the people heard about it and thought that we were trying to infect them with poliomyelitis. So we never did get to give the hydrotherapy exercises to the post-polios. 2 nights a week I went down to Hokitika and took a clinic there because there were only the 2 of us physios in Greymouth, and my boss was recently married and he would prefer to be home with his new wife. So he taught me to drive his car, and off I went and took the physio clinic at the Hokitika Hospital. My hobby at that stage was learning to fly a tiger moth, so I was kept pretty busy. The other thing too about working in Greymouth was all the coal mines were still going then, so there was a lot of orthopaedic work. There were several people on striker beds being turned too early. One of the coal miners assured me that the reason he lost his little finger was he needed the money, and it was so many pounds per joint, and losing your little finger was much better than losing your thumb, even though you got more money for your thumb. So whether he's having me on or not, but I've heard those sort of stories since, and I think that might have been true. There was a lot of chest problems. A lot of the coal miners had terminal chest problems. There were pneumonectomies done, so physio was actually very important for the chest problems, for the orthopaedic problems. And the interesting thing I found there was the surgeon superintendent required the physiotherapist to be at the first outpatient meeting to follow that person, if they were going to have physiotherapy, to follow them right through the whole process, being in theatre and checking everything out and being at the discharge interview as well. And it was so good to learn. And in theatre, he would ask you what he was doing, and he would ask you to explain the anatomy. He wouldn't ask you to explain his surgical techniques. But you really had to be on your toes when he was around. It was pretty tough, but it certainly served me well. After that, I went as a sole charge physiotherapist at Tauranui Hospital, still under the requirement of the government.